once in a while you come across a book which is quite unlike anything you've ever read before. Now, Blue, written by Pat Grant, is that book for me.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I got the same feeling, but it's not really that original in terms of story anyway. I mean, you've got these three kids who live in a small coastal town in Australia called Bolton. They bunk off of school for the day and deciding on this little mini quest down to find a body on some train tracks. So they've been told somebody's been hit by a train. And I mean, even Grant himself, in this little essay that he's got at the end, does point out the parallel with Stephen King's novella The Body, which of course got filmed as Stand By Me.
And the art style is quite reminiscent of those early kind of 80s and 90s surfer comics that were around. Having said that, Blue is quite unique, and like I said, unlike anything I've actually read before.
Well, I think that uniqueness comes from the heavy themes that this is actually looking at. From the first couple of pages, you can see this is going to be heavily mired in xenophobia and small town mentality, and that continues throughout the book as a kind of a dual storyline with the journey down the train tracks.
Yeah, now the target of this xenophobia are these multi-tentacled blue aliens that have suddenly appeared in Bolton, seemingly out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It is quite clearly a metaphor, but it's one that I feel that Grant has used very cleverly and very well in this book.
Yeah, I mean, it is, as you say, it's a clear metaphor, even to having their boats that have been washed up on shore, so the whole boat people thing. I've got to wonder how this is going to translate in other countries, other than Australia. This is an intrinsically Australian story, it really is. From the colloquialisms that are used throughout every conversation, to the visual style, as you say, with the surfy comics. I mean, honestly, you could almost smell the beach when you read this one.
It's very true. It did make me want to eat sausage rolls.
Yes, and chips with too much salt.
I do honestly think it is going to translate well. Yes, there is some very strong Australian slang, like even to the point where I wasn't quite sure what it meant. But what's more important is the cadence and the way it flows with the art style. It may not seem like it when you first open this book, but every single phrase and every single panel is there with a very specific impact in mind. Grant does a really, really clever job with this.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly got a message here, but he doesn't really take a stance that much, which is interesting. You don't really feel that there's a strong pro or anti-immigration sort of stance that he's taking.
No, you do get the feeling of how creepy localism is and how destructive that paranoia from small towns and that kind of ingrained racism can be, especially to the younger generation, because I mean, obviously these kids are 13 or 14 years old and it's already beginning to manifest in them.
Yeah, they're kind of locked in.
They are, but I think if he kind of came down on either side, it would weaken the message of the book.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, there is a very important message here.
There is.
But this is not going to appeal to everyone.
Nope.
It's really not. As a book, it's going to make some people uncomfortable, but it is going to incite conversation. It is going to have discussions, and arguments are going to come out of this.
Oh, yes.
And that's very healthy, and I think that's very important. So, look, this is a really intelligent book, and I think it's one that's well worth reading. I'm definitely giving it a buy.
Yeah, it is a buy from me as well. Blue is so cleverly written that, like you said, it is going to incite those conversations. I want to go back in a couple of weeks and reread it again. It is definitely worth a look. The art alone is really well done, and every time you look at it, you're going to see something different.
True.
I'd be really keen to hear what any of you guys that read it think, especially any of our viewers that are overseas. I think that's going to be very interesting to see the
let us
feedback.
know if it does translate, because obviously it's something that it is a universal issue, this whole immigration thing. So it'd be very interesting to see what other people think.
Indeed.